A few days ago, I was going through 24/7 Sports and checking out the numerous crystal balls that had been put in. There are obviously going to be more crystal balls put in the summer and in the fall when the games are being played, as that's when the majority of their recruits make their decisions. But I was still curious and wanted to see specifically how the Big Ten was doing and where different analysts and recruiting experts thought that different players and currently high school prospects would go to school, especially relating to Big Ten teams, of course. And I didn't find Michigan really anywhere. In fact, Michigan for, I think, a few months now has been in a pretty safe to say a dead period in recruiting. Now, again, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, it's not the summer yet. Summer visits they aren't a thing yet. They're just being scheduled now. The games, obviously, it's about 4 months until the first game is kicked off, and the games and how teams perform is obviously a huge part as to where a recruit chooses to go to school. But Michigan, they just went 12-2. My team in Michigan just achieved one of their best seasons since 1997, and yet the recruiting momentum, I'm not talking about the momentum with the current players or the culture. I think that's fine. I think the culture has been changed for the better. I think the staff still carries the same youth, energy, innovative swag that I like. That was a part of this 2021 team. But recruiting, the future seems almost about the same when it comes to recruiting, and I don't like that. Recruiting should right now for Michigan be skyrocketing. If we're being honest, it should be. Michigan just achieved one of their best seasons in ages. Like, Michigan State recruiting right now is skyrocketing. And I know that Mel Tucker is a great recruiter, and he has members of his staff who are great recruiters. But don't tell me Michigan doesn't have great recruiters. Michigan has Ron Bellamy, an amazing wide receiver at Michigan who played there, who's now the wide receivers coach. You have Mike Elston, who was one of the best recruiters in the nation, D-line coach at Notre Dame. Now he's at Michigan, where he also played football. You have Jesse Minter, who was a part of recruiting one of Vanderbilt's best classes in the past few seasons. It's very hard to recruit at Vanderbilt, and they recruited pretty well for Vanderbilt standards. And then Steve Clinkscale, you also have Sharon Moore, you have Matt Weiss. You have so many guys on that staff with good reputation and who can recruit. And yet, recruiting and the momentum surrounding it seem to be the normal. While momentum around the program and culture, which are tied in obviously to recruiting, but are also their own things, are at all-time highs. Even with Harbaugh going to the Vikings, I can say that with some confidence. Recruiting's about the same. And I think that NIL has something to do with it. Michigan is normally, I would say, a school that is slower at adapting to the times than others. For example, just look at how Michigan plays offense. Now, the offense this past season was efficient. I liked the way it was done. It was still not modern. What Michigan was this past season, and I do not mind this at all, and I think that there can be a way that this is implemented in the future if we recruit better that is modern. Michigan was essentially Wisconsin with better QB play, better offensive schemes, slightly. It was essentially Wisconsin with better talent, is what Michigan was. And we all know that if Wisconsin and Paul Chryst did have the next level of talent, they might have beaten Ohio State once or twice when they matched up with them. I don't know how many times they matched up with them under Chryst. I think it was like 4, maybe 5 times, but still, that's been one of the main reasons Wisconsin obviously can't beat Ohio State. And then Michigan takes a run-heavy offense. They add a few better things schematically to it, and they have much better QB play than Wisconsin has really had in the Paul Chryst era. And boom, you get the 12-2 season, Big Ten champs. Only 2 losses were to top 10 teams. One was to a rival. The other was to a national champion who was probably one of the maybe in the top half of national champions in the college football playoff era, who five of their defensive players were drafted in the first round. That's what Michigan was. And they did it with an offense that, if we're being honest, was not the most modern. It worked. It was amazing. I loved it. Wasn't modern. The same thing seems to be going on with NIL, except I don't love it. Michigan is somewhat adapting. It's not like they're ages and ages behind, but they're slower than, let's say, the USCs, the Texas A&Ms, the Texases, compared to most Southern schools. Oh, also Ohio State, the school down the road, is much further ahead of us in NIL. Ohio State's one of the most successful NIL programs when you include all the sports, and I credit Gene Smith for that. I credit Ryan Day for that. He obviously wants his players to benefit the most and for recruiting to continue the way it has been going at Ohio State. And Michigan, if Michigan wants to continue to compete at this level, I think that Michigan needs to have a bigger push. They need to take a little bit of a risk, because Michigan has been pretty risk averse in the past, I'd say, few decades, if we're being honest. And look where it has gotten them in the past 20 years in football. Not a whole lot of success. We're talking mainly about football in regards to the NIL. I'm going to read an article by the Wolverines, not Wolverines Wire, pardon me. Maize and Brew is where the article is from. I'm also going to read an article, briefly go over one by CBS Sports, talking about the NCAA aiming to crack down on boosters disguising pay-for-play as name, image, and likeness too. So I'm going to link those articles down below. I'll go over the Maize and Brew one in particular, briefly mention some stuff spoke by Dennis Dodd, or written by Dennis Dodd on CBS Sports, and just talk about really Michigan's two choices regarding NIL. So, Hunter Dickinson criticizes NIL at Michigan, feels bad for Juwan Howard and Jim Harbaugh. Fans of the Michigan Wolverines breathed a sigh of relief when they found out that Hunter Dickinson was coming back for his junior season, and a big reason why he wanted to return was because of NIL money. And in a recent interview with Tim McCormick and Sam Webb, Dickinson was pretty candid about NIL. He feels that it needs to improve at the university. Quote, "If I'm the number one player in the country for basketball or football, why would I come to Michigan, where they're saying they have the potential for you to get something?" Dickinson said. "When I'm at Alabama for football, or I'm at Kentucky for basketball, they're like, you can commit here in this deal. You can sign it right after you sign the letter for $1 million. I would never come to Michigan if that's the case," regarding NIL. Dickinson is one of the first NCAA athletes ever to really make money off NIL deals, including through Players Trunk and Outback Steakhouse. The star big man candidly mentioned multiple times that the NIL process is quite confusing, and he hopes players don't get duped knowing that there is money waiting for those who go pro. Again, a quote by Dickinson, "Because guys can get sucked into a deal and you don't even realize that you're in a system, in an area, in a place that you don't even like, and you find yourself there for 4 years, it won't be a fun experience for you. I hope guys take in the full experience, not just focus on the NIL, because if you do it right and your team wins enough, I feel like you'll be able to make your money at some point regardless." Dickinson mentioned that the coaches aren't allowed to help through the NIL process, and he certainly doesn't blame the coaching staffs, as their hands are somewhat tied throughout the process. Now, many people, and I don't know how true this is because, again, I'm not an insider regarding Michigan. I'm a guy who reads things, takes in information, looks at history, and draws my own conclusions. And whether they're right or wrong, well, then it is what it is. But Jim Harbaugh, there's a feeling around the program, in a certain sense, not around the program. I'd say a lot of people have told me, or at least I've heard, this theory or this statement of fact, when I don't know if it's a statement of fact, that Jim Harbaugh does whatever he wants at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh just does whatever he wants. And I don't know how true that is, if I'm being honest, especially in regards to the NIL, because Michigan for quite some time has restricted certain people in the case of football. Michigan can't target certain transfers because of academic requirements. Now, it's not like Vanderbilt or Northwestern. There's no reason to excuse Michigan missing out on a high school player because of it. Almost any high school player can commit to Michigan, but for transfers, for whatever reason, then academics actually becomes a big deal, and only certain transfers, mostly graduate transfers, can end up transferring into Michigan because it's hard for a non-graduate transfer who has college credits, and as someone who is in the college experience and has close to 90 credits before I graduate high school, it is something to consider. Michigan is very strict with their credits, and only certain credits from certain schools can transfer in. So that's why only graduate transfers normally come into Michigan and such. But Michigan does have some restrictions, and I feel like if Harbaugh did have the complete control, if he did whatever he wanted to do, and he does have a lot of power at Michigan, but if he did whatever he wanted to do, I feel like some of this stuff wouldn't be in place. Because most coaches, they want to win, and they will do whatever, they'll do what they can no matter what, unless it crosses the big red line, which isn't far for a lot of people, if we're being honest, in this industry, to win, to get recruits. And why, if you're Juwan Howard, or if you're Jim Harbaugh, specifically in what we're talking about, Jim Harbaugh, you want Michigan to advance in this regard. You also want Michigan to pay you more money because you just gave them their best season since 1997. You want them to give big raises to your coaching staff. And Michigan they didn't do any of those to the degree that I thought they should. I thought that they actually somewhat underpaid Jim Harbaugh, because the way contracts and money is going, a few years ago, if Jim Harbaugh did what he did this past season, I wouldn't think that $7-8 million, whatever he's getting paid, is underpaid. But now, Mel Tucker getting nearly $10 million. Several other coaches are getting more than $10 million. Some are even getting closer to $15 million a year. And then Jim Harbaugh, I think his highest paid staff member, I don't know who it is, I think is barely making around $1 million. That has to change. Michigan football has never been prioritized the way it needs to be for it to be successful. And I think it's beginning to show, especially in NIL. And players want to make money. Like Dickinson said, every player, I don't care what they say, they all want to make money. If I was a football player and had a skill set that was unique, I would want money. Being completely honest. And NIL allows Michigan to do something that is unprecedented in sports history. And Mike Valenti, this is a few weeks ago, put it this way, and I'm going to put it this way, the way he said it, and then get back to the article and then talk about Michigan's choices in the CBS article. But anyway, if Michigan is far enough in NIL, what if there is a kid in Ohio, like 4-star, 5-star, that Michigan would normally, under normal circumstances, never get? Kid's a hardcore Ohio State fan. But what if Michigan comes to the table? They offer him a $500,000 NIL deal or $1 million NIL deal. And Ohio State only offers him half of that. What Michigan could do is Michigan could swing a player who is favored toward and biased toward another school because either he grew up as a fan of their team, his parents are a fan of their team, he lives close to them, so he has family ties. Money is a game changer. Money is, for most people, not even football, is a complete game changer. People will move from Michigan to California, or Michigan to Alaska, or Florida to Maine, or Maine to Florida, vice versa. They will move to get better pay. Football players, they're people too. Same deal. Michigan has a huge opportunity here, and I know that the NCAA might be cracking down on collectives, so maybe it is actually wise that Michigan is taking this slowly, and we'll explain in a few minutes why that is. But I think that Michigan here, they can take a risk, and there are much more there are much more benefits than costs if they take this risk, I think. And again, I'm not an expert or an insider on Michigan football, in my opinion at least. I'm not tied to the program, and I don't know the greatest deal about NIL or how it operates, but from what I can tell and see, I can form an opinion, and that's my opinion. Michigan can either take a risk like USC, Texas A&M, Miami. They can go out and get a big name or spur some recruiting momentum, or they can continue to play it safe. Now, playing it safe might work out because the NCAA aims to crack down on boosters disguising as NIL payments, because I think the NCAA stated that boosters aren't supposed to be involved with player payments and business deals. And Miami in particular is a case of that, because John Ruiz Jr. is a billionaire alumni who leads a University of Miami collective and has become the face of the collective issue. He's an attorney, son of immigrants who attended Miami when its football dynasty took shape in the 1980s. And, billionaire, he has money to spend, so why not spend a few million paying player A, who's a quarterback, player B, running back, C, cornerback, D, defensive end, all of whom are 5 stars, 4 stars, and he can maybe give Miami some extra juice and help them become great again. And then Texas had a collective, or I think, they had a collective where they paid each offensive lineman $50,000 a year or something. So they're popping up everywhere, especially in the South. USC, Texas A&M, Miami are some big names there. And I'll link this article and the Michigan article again down below. I didn't read all of them, but I just gave basic outlines, read points that I wanted to read. And I just think that this is just an area that Michigan needs to look at, is my opinion on this. And this is probably where I'm going to leave it off for you guys to make a decision. What do you guys think? I want to hear from you, the people, what you think should be done, especially Michigan fans, because I have wanted Michigan to compete at the national level all my life as a fan, which as a 19-year-old is not a very long life. But I am a guy who, in a lot of things, though it's not necessarily a great thing, I naturally have a tendency toward all in or all out, two extremes. And I've learned in life that there's a gray area. But in football, in sports, in something that is fun and entertaining, I think that principle is not necessarily a bad thing. Michigan needs to make a choice. I think that for them, they need to watch this carefully. They need to stay in line. They should follow whatever rules are laid out, or at least try to. Try not to cross over the red line. Maybe stepping on it is okay in some situations, but don't cross it, because the NCAA, while seemingly powerless, could spring out of nowhere and strike down multiple schools. And I don't want Michigan or my university to have sanctions or get close to having sanctions. But Michigan's playing it very safe here with NIL. And it would be wonderful for recruiting, for momentum, for just rewarding the players for what they've done, just rewarding them with money, giving them a reward for their hard work. Because Alabama, USC, Texas A&M, they're already at that point, and they're not going to stop. The bidding wars for players has already begun, and I don't think, even though I'm not necessarily a big fan of it, I don't like where it seems that college football is heading toward this mini pros, like mini NFL, the precursor to the NFL. I don't necessarily like that. Almost like an NBA G League, I think. Not an expert on that either. But I'm not a fan of it, but it is what it is. I have no power. And if football is heading this way, Michigan, I want to see my program succeed. I want to see them keep with the times. I want to keep seeing Big Ten championships, and I want to see a national title, because Michigan might be able to get away with winning the Big Ten and doing well, doing more with less, without NIL. they might be able to do that. But at the national title level, you have to have the elite QB. Or you have to have, in Georgia's case, where they don't have the elite QB. They have the good QB with the elite supporting cast and everyone surrounding him. You have to have elite players, top 10 classes, top 5 classes, or most of the case, and sometimes or elite coaches and developers. All of those things, the elite coaches mainly, before NIL was even a thing, the elite coaches took the millions of dollars. It was very rare that elite coaches were underpaid, and once you discovered they were elite, they were taken away or they received a raise. It's no different from the coaching world, except now instead of having a bidding war for different coaches, it's extended to the players. So Michigan needs to step up to the plate, in my opinion. They can play it safe. I have no influence in that, but I think playing it safe will cost them dearly. And Harbaugh, after winning a Big Ten title, needs to be given the resources, because now he's proven he can do it. Got to give him the resources to help him do it again. Thank you all for watching. That's all I have to say on this topic. Again, tell me your thoughts down below on the NIL situation and what you think Michigan and other schools, your own school, the school you're a fan of, tell me what you think they should do, whether it's Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, USC, I don't care. Whatever you're a fan of, tell me what you think they should do in the NIL era down below. And make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and click the notification bell so you can get notified when I post new content. There will be a video about my new top 25 that releases tomorrow. I am so excited to release it. It's in a weird way of putting it, but I'm very excited for that video. So hit the notification bell so you can get notified when I post that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.